Good evening. We call the Hawarden, Iowa City Council to order on Wednesday, July 27th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Short agenda item tonight. Travis is not with us. He has business. Other staff members are not here either. So if you wish to address the council again, open business on 1C. There are no public hearings today. Agenda item number 1A, approval of the July 13th, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes. Have those in your packet. Yep. Motion by Monty.
Second.
Seconded by John. All in favor then of the July 13th, 2022 regular city council meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That passes 4-0. Approval of our July 27th claims for payment. I'll start to my right with Monty for questions. John, questions?
None, thank you.
Patty, questions?
I have none.
Rob?
No questions.
Is there a motion for approval of claims for payment?
So moved.
Moved by John. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Rob. All in favor then of the July 27th, 2022 claims for payment, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That again passes 4-0. Next is open business from the community. Hearing none, we'll move on to the mayor's report. Our thanks go to the volunteers that put their talents and effort into getting the dog park up and running. Please take advantage of this new amenity in our community. Looks like a good project almost getting completed. So we'll move to staff reports. We have two staff members. Corey, anything from your point of view?
Nothing to report tonight.
Okay, thank you. Wanda?
Just want to let everybody know that it's hard to believe, but the pool season is coming to an end. That will close on August 7th. We are losing our staff that are going back to school, so in order to be safe, the pool will be closing. I believe that the date that they've sent tentatively is August 7th. And that's all I have, Rick.
Thank you very much. Any comments on item 2C from council members tonight? Hearing none, we'll move to other agenda items. Number 3, presentation of the fiscal year 2021 financial audit. Graham Forbes, please.
All right, thank you. So as the mayor mentioned, my name is Graham Forbes with Williams Company. So we're winding the calendar back on you a little bit. As you noted, that we're presenting, these are the financials for the 12 months ended June 30 of 21. So just keep that in mind as we go through here. So I think you've maybe gotten electronic copies or have some hard copies in front of you there. So follow along as you like. I'll just flip through and hit a few high points or items that I want to point out, but feel free to stop me with questions or at any point throughout the process would be great. So, so the first item I'll point out, starting on page 2, is the first page of our independent auditor's report. And that's the main product of all the work that we do, putting our opinion on these financial statements. Then aptly towards the bottom of that page is where we start, the section summary of opinions. And I just want to note, similar to fiscal year 2020 as well, we did have a qualified opinion related to the cable/internet utility fund. For similar exact reasons as we did in the prior year as well, where basically we're unable, and then following on page 3, there's the first full paragraph there, basis for the qualified opinion on that cable internet utility fund. As it notes there, basically we were unable to obtain enough evidence to test or corroborate the revenue that's shown in the city's financial statements for that fund. So we're not necessarily saying the number's wrong. We just couldn't come up, with a lot of help and assistance with the city and a lot of legwork on both ends, the proper reports or evidence, if you will, for us to be able to obtain the reasonable assurance that those figures were correct. So So we don't necessarily are saying what's there is incorrect. We just couldn't obtain enough audit evidence to, recalculate and obtain the evidence to have a reasonable assurance that it was correct, I guess is the easiest way to explain it. So, and I know that's been at least a 2-year process now with some, trying to obtain appropriate reports and reporting for that entity to be able to recreate or recalculate those revenue amounts. And it has been a real struggle, I know, for the city and for us, and working with some of those vendors to try and obtain that evidence. And to date, we still have not been able to do so. But so that's a short story into what's going on there.
Have you changed your formula for, you have a formula you utilize to, to check the two, to reconcile them or whatever, and sometimes it's restrictive and other times it's gives you a little more leeway. Has that changed any that it could?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, yeah, we have materiality levels, we call them, where, we expect to be able to get within XYZ dollars, and that changes year to year
Okay.
and between different funds. Those materiality levels, based on the size and volume of activity in the fund, those numbers vary. So, yeah, I would, Betty, I mean, those numbers will change some from year to year. Without having it in front of me, I can't say, but I would say probably, between FY 19 to 20 to 21, for example, I don't think there'd probably be a material change or a large change, because I don't think because all those amounts are just, required formula-driven numbers that, we drop in numbers from the prior year financials and the current year financials, and that, we have different thresholds we're required to live by based off those calculations. So, I mean, so yes, they would have changed a little, and probably actually even increased, I think, as, expenditures and revenues in that fund increased. As far as the calculations we're attempting to undergo to recreate it, we really, the overall model, we haven't changed. I mean, like I said, we worked with lawn lines in the city and, put our heads together multiple different times to try and figure out what, basically tell us what we're missing in our calculation to make this work. And so far, we just haven't been able to, nobody's been able to point us in that direction. So, I don't know if I answered your question well there or not, but.
Okay.
Anything else on that? Otherwise, on every other opinion unit, they're called, was a clean or unmodified opinion for every other opinion unit, as they're referred to, which would mean every other fund and then the non-major funds combined for the city. So that was the only one that we had any issue or any modification to the opinion on. So, otherwise, then starting at page 5, it's what's called management's discussion and analysis. And just like it sounds, that's some information that's put together by city staff. And as you flip a few pages into it, you'll see that there's some good comparative information, where in this case we compare FY 21 to FY 20. And then there's some commentary that follows from city staff as well that talks about, this type of expenses increased due to this, or same thing with revenue. So just some good commentary on some of the changes from fiscal year to fiscal year, and a good summary, if you will, of the overall financial position of the city without flipping through the remaining 70-some pages. If you just want kind of a snapshot of kind of where we're at and some commentary, I think that's some really good information there as well. From there, I'll just hit on a few different financial statement items very quickly here. On page 19 of the report is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the governmental funds. And as you'll see there, the two columns noted are the general fund, and then all the other governmental fund types are included in aggregate in that non-major governmental column as well. So I just want to point, the general fund, I would say a fairly stable year. You'll see towards the top, towards the bottom of the page, the net change in fund balance was an increase of approximately $110,000. So I think a fairly, obviously, going the right direction, not a decrease in fund balance, so that's positive. And then the aggregate non-major governmental fund showed a slight decrease of about 39,000. So, I would say in the grand scheme on a, a three some odd $million budget to have a net increase of about 70,000, I would consider a pretty stable year with, kind of, nothing out of the ordinary, very close to and we'll touch on that, to what was budgeted for the year, so. Then likewise, on pages 23 and 24 are similar statements, statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position for the city utility funds, or the proprietary funds. So, a little bit different format, but similar information for all the utilities, water, wastewater, electric, and you can see, no surprises there either, I don't believe, and we can see the results of those different funds for the year as well. Following those financials, and then we get into the notes to the financials that start on page 31. So if we're looking to drill into anything specific, city accounting policy, composition of their capital assets, information on outstanding bonds or any other indebtedness and maturity schedules and interest rates, as well as a lot of detailed information on the city's net pension liability or other post-employment benefit liability. There's several pages worth of information in detail on those areas as well. So, again, I'm not going to drill into any one area in those notes, but would be happy to do so if anyone has any questions or like me to point anything out. But from there, I think just a few more things I'll quick point out. Pages 61 and 62. I mentioned earlier briefly the budget, the city budget, and what this schedule is on pages 61 and 62 is we take the actual numbers for the fiscal year for the city, which, there's actually 3 different components that go into it, starting from left to right, the governmental funds, the proprietary funds, and then that primary government total is really what I would consider the city total. But then also, as you all know, the community hospital is a budgetary component of the city as well. And so that is required to be included in this comparison. And so we take that reporting entity total and compare that to what the final amended budget was and say, okay, how did we do as compared to that amended budget with our actual results? And then that variance column on the far right is showing us what that difference was, with a negative number being below, well, and it depends if you're looking at the revenue or the expenditure side, basically with a negative being an amount where it came in, adversely with what you budgeted, positive being positive as opposed to what was budgeted. So as you can see on the expenditure side, which was really the focus of any of these budget comparisons, because that's the side the city can control. Revenues for the most part, especially on the primary government side, property taxes, state aid, so forth, those are what they are. So it's the expenditure side that's what we call the legal level of control that we look at, that state looks at, and things like that. So you'll see overall, in total, the city was about $1.7 million under budget. There was a couple of what we call functional areas, which are public safety, public works, health and social services. Those are the functional categories. Public safety and public works were both slightly over budget, but in total, the city was well under budget in total. So, positive, and I think which also led to some of the positive results, is like we talked about in the general fund there as well. I think, definitely a correlation there. So, from there, then we get into a bunch more detailed information on the city's net pension liability, other post-employment benefits, and then from there rolls into what we call the combining funds statements on page 70 and 71, and then continuing on where, based on required calculation to determine what's a major fund versus a non-major fund. Starting page 70 is the individual statements for all the non-major funds, the smaller funds, if you will, of the city. If you're looking for, specifically, how did the employee benefit levy do, or the road use tax fund, or the debt service fund, or some of the various capital projects funds. That's all found there on starting on page 70. Following that is some more combining statements of non-major funds, and then on page 79, we get into some required reporting required by the government auditing standards, and some of the more required reporting there. But I think at that point, I'll stop my ramble here, but would be happy to answer any questions you might have. Otherwise, I guess then want to thank Wanda and her staff for their assistance. It was kind of a process working through some of those cable internet calculations and fighting that for quite a period of time. And then we were kind of up to the end of the rope there, trying to get some of the final financial statements from the hospital auditor to complete things. But we got everything put together here, and which is some of the reason why we're a little bit later in the calendar than I'd really like to be. And I appreciate Wanda and the rest of the staff's help getting it this far, so. Yep, thank you. Anything
you.
else?
I don't have anything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Agenda item number 4. Hawarden City Council would like to go into closed session for annual review of the city administrator. Requested this be in closed section, subject to Iowa Code 21.15, parent I, parent 1, parent I. Call for a roll call vote to go into closed session, please.
Feldecker.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
Harvey.
Aye.
On a 4-0 roll call vote, City of Hawarden will be going into closed session, so I'll ask that you leave the room, please.